Distinguished guests, past district governors, past presidents of Rotary clubs of District 3291, fellow Rotarian ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to one and all. I am Shrabani Chakraborty, Charter President of Rotary Club of Calcutta, Haryana, and currently Assistant Governor, Zone 15. It is my pleasure and privilege to be moderating today's evening talk show called Health Talk. So, friends, today we have amongst us two eminent doctors, Dr. Amitabh Shah and Dr. Aviral Roy, who are specialized to answer to all our COVID related queries. Dr. Amitabh Shah is a senior consultant and co-director, Medica Institute of Critical Care and Internal Medicine senior teacher, DNB Critical Care Medicine, Medica Super Specialty Hospital. His special area of interest, multidisciplinary team development in critical care, teaching and training of critical care students, simulation training, research and audit in critical care. Clinical leadership, managing infectious diseases. Dr. Aviral Roy, consultant intensivists at Medica Super Specialty Hospital, is an experienced internal medicine and critical care specialist. He's a diplomat from American Board of Internal Medicine and has practiced in the city of Philadelphia in the Department of Critical Care prior to coming back to India. His areas of expertise include H1N1 pneumonia, COVID-19 infection, dengue fever, ARDS, septic shock, use of ECMO for lung failure and neurocritical care, and treats the sickest of the sick patients, especially those with liver, kidney, heart, or lung failure, multi-organ failure, and are often on life support. So friends, I will start with Dr. Aviral Roy. Dr. Roy, over to you and welcome on board, please.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Rotary for giving us this opportunity to, talk to all of you about what I'm sure is a completely overdone and a topic that is a table side conversation in almost every household for the last 9 months. So, hopefully now that the vaccine is here, there might be light at the end of the tunnel, but we are here to talk about what's new, what's old, and good practices that we have learned and what we should continue to keep doing. We are just waiting for Dr. Saha to join, but in the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and start. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my slides now. Very good. Can you all see the slides? Very good. So let's start. So we're going to talk about COVID-19 then, now, and some myths. So what is COVID-19 as far as you all know? It's a single positive stranded RNA virus, which basically means it's basically a strand of DNA, not DNA, but what viruses use is called RNA. And what that allows it to do is it can easily attach a cell and directly, almost instantly, use the cell's own mechanism to start creating copies of itself. And then using that mechanism, and it starts replicating inside the cell. What corona does is it attaches to cells and takes over the cell to become basically a coronavirus factory, and just starts creating billions and billions and billions of copies of itself. It spreads primarily via respiratory droplets within 6 feet. There is some fomite spread, and what we mean by fomite are surfaces, commonly metallic surfaces and plastic surfaces are frequently touched. So, a doorknob at the office, a doorknob in a restaurant, opening a car door, or not, also not car door, maybe a bus rail, or handrails in the metro, public transportation system. It has R naught of 2 to 3, on average 2.5. What does R naught mean? It basically means if one person is infected, how long does it take, or how many other people can they infect? When this pandemic started, this R naught was 2 to 4 actually. But as we have gotten better at managing this virus, that R naught has dropped and is probably now down to 1.1 to 1.2, depending upon the city you're in and the population and the circles that you're moving in. What does it cause? 80% of people will have asymptomatic to a mild viral illness, means they'll just have some weakness, a low grade fever, or maybe even nothing. 10% of people will have severe viral pneumonia, which will need hospitalization and maybe some oxygen. This is what we call the SARI, that stands for severe acute respiratory infection. Another 10% who will develop ARDS, which means they'll need some sort of advanced oxygen. This could be high flow oxygen, this could be mechanical ventilation, this could be BiPAP, this could be ECMO. Most of these people also develop multi-organ failure from the low oxygen numbers and the attack of COVID-19 on their system. We have about a 2% death rate in males and a 1.3% death rate in females. So obviously, I'm sure a lot of you have realized coronavirus affects the male members of society far more severely than others. Now, these numbers might look, no, that's not too bad. And there's been a lot of, a comfort factor, or, the loss of fear in society, right? Oh, you just got corona, it's okay. But remember, we see 3,000 cases a day in West Bengal, 4,000 cases a day in West Bengal. That means 60 people will not make it on a daily basis, right? So this thing is still very dangerous, and we should still continue to be careful of what coronavirus is. We're going to talk about disease management highlights. This is meant more for the medical it's slightly more technical, but what I will do over here for our audience is that how to understand if any of your loved ones, hopefully none of them will have to go through this, but if they are going to go through it, what do doctors mean when they say and use certain terms, okay? So prevention is better than cure. This thing has not changed. This thing, in fact, has not changed since 1920, or for that matter, even since the 1600s. The word quarantine actually comes from the word 40 days. That is when there was the bubonic plague epidemic in Europe in the 1600s. They would quarantine, Venice, in fact, would quarantine ships for 40 days in the harbor. That's what quarantine day comes from. Quadra 10 means 40 days they would have to wait in the harbor before the sailors were allowed to disembark and come on board, assuming they didn't have fever or any other symptoms. So this is the same since the 1600s. Think about it. Social distancing, we said 6 feet. Mask use decreases infectivity by 95%. This means if I wear a mask and if you wear a mask, the likelihood of somebody getting infected drops by 95%. As far as possible, you minimize contact of shared surfaces, frequent disinfection of shared surfaces, frequent air exchanges, that's about 12 air exchange an hour. Technical term, especially for people who are in ICUs or in some sort of enclosed facility. What this means for the regular public, if you're going to be indoors, try to be in a well ventilated room that, either with the windows open or the doors open as much as possible. Try to avoid having many people crowding into a closed room. Population serology is more of a public health measure, basically to get an idea of how many people in your system or in your community have had coronavirus or have not had coronavirus and are still susceptible to getting an infection. And now that the vaccine is over here, a rapid vaccination strategy for appropriate risk groups as and when vaccines become more available. So so now that assuming that you're in a facility that has coronavirus, what do? You try to decrease the viral load and infectivity of your people. If you're medical staff, you try to limit exposure of medical staff. You try to rotate them through non-COVID units. You do mandatory cool down periods. There was some thought of ivermectin use. We use it. It's not really proven. We avoid aerosolizing procedures. You might have seen this in hospitals. You might say, why are you not putting my patient on ventilator, on BiPAP, CPAP, nebulizers? It's because we try to avoid giving them these things because then they just land up spewing coronavirus particles all over the place. When your patients are infected, we will tend to put them in the in cohort them, which means everybody in that unit has coronavirus. What this does is makes sure once you have coronavirus, you can't get it again from somebody else. You can't be like, oh, you know what, my patient is very severe, he should not be, my patient is mild disease, he should not be kept to a severe patient because he'll get bad disease from him. This does not happen. Once you have coronavirus, you're not going to get it from somebody else. And lastly, for people whose status is unknown, we try to use isolation rooms where they're kept only by themselves and they have their own ventilation of that room with a dedicated air in, dedicated air out, maybe a negative pressure room to ensure that what they have nobody else can get. This is while their status continues to remain unknown. What you will see us do very often in the OPD, if you're having only mild symptoms, we use paracetamol for fever, we use inhalers for shortness of breath, and we start them on blood thinners. If they're a mild case, we just might give them aspirin, Ecosprin. If they're more severe, there are other blood thinners we can use. We try to go for oxygen therapy early. If we need oxygen, we try to do what's called self-proning. We make them lie down on their stomach. We ask them to do deep breathing exercises. And we try to use just regular oxygen as much as possible. We try to avoid ventilators as far as possible. Ventilators is bad news. The moment you become started on oxygen, we will normally give you steroids. If you need ventilation, then we do very aggressive ventilations for ARDS. It is a very technical term, but you might hear the people say, oh, we had to paralyze your loved one, or we had to prone your loved one. We might do an early tracheostomy, but these are more technical things that we do in order to minimize the damage that COVID is going to do to the lungs. Then I say chemotherapy, which in medical terms, chemotherapy basically means drug therapy. Chemo means drugs. There used to be some time that everybody was getting HCQS. This practice went away when we realized we did multiple large trials and nothing worked. Yeah, HCQS did not work. This drug therapy called ritonavir, lopinavir did not work. We all stopped this long time ago. The reason you see me lined it out, it's then and now. This used to be then. Now we are now. We're like, no longer do we do these things. Remdesivir, we still do. There is data which says it might decrease your infection, but really does it help save your life? We don't know. But if what we have learned is, if you're going to give this drug, give it early. Once day 7, day 10 turn up, it's not going to work on you. So that is what we have learned now. Interferon 1 beta, some people say it works, some people don't, say it's under investigation, it's still a learning curve. And of course, steroids, you hear us giving steroids left, right, and center. Steroids are actually the mainstay of treatment of COVID-19. Luckily, we learned this early on in the disease, and there is no doubt steroids have helped save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives. We might ask you when you're in the, when you're in your OPD, we might say, oh, check your D-dimer, your LDH, your ferritin, your IL-6, your CRP. What are these things? These are just measures of how aggressively your body is fighting COVID-19. It's important to understand COVID-19, the virus by itself is not that bad. What really causes damage is the body's response to the virus. And in the attempt of the body of getting rid of the virus, the body does more damage than the virus itself. The first 3-4 days when you feel like you have a viral fever, that is just virus. On day 7, day 8, when you're feeling breathless and really short of breath and having chest pain and difficulty breathing, that is not virus. That is your body going after the virus and in the process damaging your lungs. Forget about tocilizumab, it's more of a technical thing, but I'm sure there are people who we use tocilizumab. We use it carefully because while it works well, you are running a higher risk of infection. We use very high dose of steroids. So, we have to be very careful with all your patients. Sorry. Because while they work very well on COVID-19 and the body, they leave you open to a bacterial attack. So, very often we are very careful about our patients, and any evidence of anything else going on, we might add high dose antibiotics on them. Thromboprophylaxis basically means prevention of blood clots. They're the most simple words. Almost everybody gets started on 75 aspirin, or whether they are in the hospital or if they're high risk, even if they're outside the hospital. If they need a lot of oxygen, there's lots of evidence of body attack, then we start them on a drug called enoxaparin. Doesn't matter, it's a blood thinner. We might get CT scans looking for blood clots in the lungs. We might get ultrasound looking for blood clots in the lungs. And very, very often, even once we discharge our patients from the hospital, we leave them on blood thinners. It used to be 5 to 7 days. Now people will do it as long as 14 days to maybe even as far as 3 months, depending on how sick the patients were in the hospital. Post ventilation, if your loved one or anybody's ever on the ventilator, what to expect? Ventilation is bad. It leaves the lungs really badly damaged. They will need what's called a tracheostomy. That means long-term strategy. We make a hole in the neck and put the tube in the neck so we can wake the patients up and we can at least get them sitting out of bed in a chair. They get very aggressive physiotherapy to prevent muscle weakness. We try to make sure they don't get bacterial superinfections. We will follow up with them in dedicated teleconsultation clinics. Normally, one of our colleagues will be following up with them. Recent guidelines just came out from Department of Health West Bengal and the Department of Health of India that now say that you have to do up to 1 year of close follow-up, especially for those patients who are really sick or needed ICU level care or very high levels of oxygen. As far as family is concerned, remember they will have prolonged symptoms even when discharged. They might have cough for at least 2 to 4 weeks. They will have weakness for 1 to 3 months. And if there were people who had very, very high dose of oxygen or long stay in the ICU, they might have shortness of breath extending for 6 months to up to 1 year. Anybody knows what this is? This is Pandora opening her little box. So, a lot of questions are being asked and I was like, does drinking hot water of hot peppers protect you from COVID-19? No, it does not. By the time you're symptomatic, the virus is already inside your cells. The only thing that's going to kill cells inside over there is antibiotic or antiviral. Nothing that you take hot pepper is going to work. If by drinking hot water, all you're going to do is burn your throat. There was a rumor that cell phone on 5G causes virus disease to spread. That is not true. Hot temperature kills COVID-19 if the temperature is above 48 degrees centigrade. 48 degrees centigrade in Calcutta will kill a patient, kill any healthy person, forget COVID-19. Yeah, don't worry about it. Madras had the worst hit of COVID-19 in the middle of peak summer. That being said, COVID-19 spreads far more easily in winter. Think about it. When did the second or the third wave that Europe and USA are going through right now? It's winter over there. That is why they're getting hit so hard. Earlier, the coronavirus that used to survive only maybe 12 to 14 hours in the outdoors will now survive up to 40 to 72 hours. It's a refrigerator over there right now. Do not drink disinfectant to kill the virus inside you. This will kill you. It will not kill virus. There is no known cure for this virus. This is correct. There is no cure. All the antiviral medication we do only decreases length of symptoms. It does not cure you. The only cure is you actually fighting the virus off yourself. I have taken pneumonia vaccines and the influenza vaccines. Are you safe? You're safe from pneumonia and influenza. You're not safe from corona. While I've had COVID-19, will I get it again? We know that you are immune for a period of at least 4 to 6 months. That is almost certain. We still don't know how far this immunity will last. All studies are ongoing. You keep hearing in the news that, COVID-19 antibodies are no longer detectable after 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, 4 months, whatever, some months. Antibodies are not the only way of your immune system protecting you. Your immune system has memory. Remember that. Just because you don't have antibodies does not mean you don't have memory. If I was to give you coronavirus again with undetectable antibodies, they will show up again in a matter of days and they will fight the infection off. So don't worry about your antibodies. They are not an indicator of immunity. Turmeric and garlic will protect you against COVID-19? No, they will not by themselves. Having a good immune system, being healthy, being well nourished, exercising, eating a balanced diet, that is what will protect you from COVID-19 or getting severe COVID-19. Everybody will get COVID-19 if I give a virus to you. What matters is whether you get asymptomatic disease or whether you get severe disease. Then some questions regarding the vaccines, right? Will this vaccine come to you? Yes, it will eventually come to you. What matters is your age, your comorbidities, and what job do you do. By job, I mean, are you a frontline healthcare worker? You will get the vaccine early. Are you a transportation worker? Are you a bus conductor? Are you a bus driver? You will get the vaccine early. Are you an airline pilot? Are you a essentials? Are you a firefighter, policeman? You'll get the virus early. Are you above the age of 60? Do you have diabetes? Do you have heart disease, kidney disease? You will probably get the vaccine early. That is what I mean. How safe is the vaccine? The vaccine is very safe. It is safer than actually getting coronavirus. Remember, getting coronavirus is a 2% death rate. The vaccine almost has a 0% death rate. It's like 0.001% death rate. And that also not from the vaccine. That is just from a baseline risk of getting run over by a car or anything. Very, very low rate of side effects. Most common side effect that they have noticed is just pain at the injection site that normally goes away 24 to 48 hours. Dr. Saha has an extensive presentation of what vaccine is and how it works, so I won't go into it. What I will say is there are only, most vaccines that we have about 2 doses that are about 3 to 4 weeks apart, and we expect immunity to kick in 2 weeks after the second dose of vaccine. You all might have heard there's some Haryana minister who got the vaccine and then got coronavirus. He only got the first dose of coronavirus, and that also 5 or 6 days later after that he got coronavirus. So he did not have immunity yet. The vaccine didn't have time to work. He got exposed to coronavirus before the vaccine had a time to develop the antibodies. And lastly, how long will immunity last from vaccine? We do not know yet. The vaccine have only been in development for 6 to 8 months now. We do anticipate at least 1 to 2 years of immunity, but we will only know once coronavirus goes on for at least 1 to 2 to 3 years, and then depending on at what rate people start getting coronavirus again, will we know what happens.
Thank you, Oviral, for giving extensive lectures on the COVID infections. And what my understanding about this meeting is probably we need to address more of their concern rather than speaking of ours. So Oviral has actually covered almost all the part, including the vaccines, except I have few slides which actually showing that how the vaccine works and how the vaccine actually gives the immunity to the individuals and at the same time to the society. So I am just going through 2-3 slides, but I would like to actually take the questions from the audience because there are a lot of misconceptions, miscommunications that is happening. It was earlier, it was very high. Now after repeated things that has come down. So I'm just sharing my. So now and then means Dr. Oviral has actually shown you how actually we have started to treat the COVID-19 in the month of March, and after having over few months, like 6 months, 7 months, we have actually adopted so many new things and actually started all so many things which doesn't show any mortality benefit. Now, having said that, the antivirals and the other parameters and the other things that what we are practicing to treat the COVID patients, only 3 things actually improves the mortality. One is the steroid. The second is the pruning. That means even in the AVEC pruning, the concept of AVEC pruning actually been popularized in these COVID situations. And the third is the low molecular weight heparin for preventions of any thrombus anywhere in the systems. So initially, when there was a very high death rate in the country of Italy, they did some autopsies, and they are saying that there are some clot which is happening inside the pulmonary arteries. And the concept of using this low molecular weight heparin any form into a picture after having that autopsy reports, and that changed the scenario. So the steroid, early steroids, the high dose of steroids if it is required, the AVEC pruning and thromboprophylaxis has changed the scenario, and it has death rate and moderate COVID patients. The disease severity, all we know, the disease severity, obviously it is higher on the elderly people and also the patients who are immunocompromised. Mortality, again, if we see in a hospital scenario, it is around 10 to 15%. But if we look into a larger section, especially involving all the asymptomatic, symptomatic patients, then the mortality goes down below 0.1%. It's almost as good as the seasonal influenza. So the COVID as such is not a very killing disease, but yes, it kills if we do not treat the patients at the right time and if we ignore the things when the patient needs at the utmost care. So these are the common symptoms which is happening nowadays. The only one thing out of all these things I want to share with you, any patient who is anosmic, that means the patient doesn't smell. It has been shown that the patient who is having this problem of anosmia, they are doing well. So any patient suffering from COVID, they have anosmia. That means this patient is less likely to go for a severe disease. But yes, always the exceptions are there. So I am just keeping all these things. It is been already said by Dr. Obira. Now, one thing that I want to show you that the discharge policy of COVID-19 has actually changed over time. Initially, there was some concept of keeping all the patients until the patients become negative. Then the paradigm shift to change on the patients is off oxygen or off fever for at least 3 days. Now, even there are a lot of questions that comes to you about the DAMA or something else. Now, we are now mostly moderately involving the patients when we see that the patient is doing well, patient doesn't require any oxygen, there is less chances of having further deterioration at home. We are jolly well can discharge the patients provided this typical criteria of discharge, which is being laid by the health government of India and the government of West Bengal Health Department is meeting by. So come straight away to the vaccine, how it works. So if someone of us is vaccinated for some disease, usually our immune system has got some memory against that particular pathogen. So even if the antibody is not there, what overall said, that the memory cell is there to understand what the pathogen is. So if the same pathogen have an entry inside the body, the memory cell suddenly realize that yes, it is the known enemy. So I have my instrument in my armamentarium and they start producing the antibody, and that antibody successfully kills that particular pathogens. So it is true for the measles, chickenpox, and any other things. So we are waiting for these COVID vaccines to come. Now, what is the problem with COVID? The COVID problem is, if we look at it, that any vaccine which is being produced against the DNA virus, it is very easy. But if it is RNA virus, then it is to some extent difficult to produce vaccines permanently, which will be very, very effective. So basically, all the scientists across the world, they are really working very, very hard to produce the vaccines against this RNA virus. And the concept of RT-PCR, that most of the time that we do the RT-PCR, you must know that the RNA virus, whenever we are actually checking through our machines, we are reversing it, that is reverse transcription, producing this RNA chain to our DNA, and then we detect it. So that's why it is called the RT-PCR. So this RNA virus has a problem. Now, how we developed a vaccine? Now, we have developed some sort of vaccines that there is an antigen we take a very smaller portions, which is not very strong enough to produce any disease symptoms to the body. We take the portions of the virus and add on some adjuvant and the preservative and also a stabilizer. So that produce vaccines. And once the vaccines develops, it introduces inside the body, that produce artificial infections inside the body, and the body developed antibody initially. Then obviously our immune system is now come to a knowledge that this is a new antigen which may introduce in the body and can create some issues. So I have to produce some antibodies, and that memory cells have that memory. So it is something that we are actually in a class learning something. It is the same thing. It is the basically vaccination is to make our immune system to learn about the new pathogen. So this is the vaccine. So once one patient is vaccinated or someone is vaccinated, this is the new antibody which with some specific that particular some specific armamentarium, the instrument which is acting against that particular organism. Now, there is a lot of things that we know about the herd immunity. Sometimes the paper says that 80% of the populations when being infected, there will be a herd immunity and something. So basically, what is herd immunity? That means if a maximum portions of the populations in a society being infected with some form of infections, so the other part of the society is also being effectively prevented that particular infection. So that is called the herd immunity. Now, to have the herd immunity, we have to be infected maximum portions of the populations either by the disease itself or by the vaccines, where we can produce artificial, very low grade infections inside the body. So this is actually the herd immunity, when we cannot give a vaccines, particularly somewhere in some portions of the body. If out of these 5, the 3 being vaccinated, so basically it covers the whole protections for the whole society. Now, where we are, that we are all waiting for the vaccines to come in our society so that we can prevent the corona. So now there are a lot of vaccines which has been actually going through the different phases of study in the different areas. And the phase 3 study, there are whenever there is a clinical research, there are 1, 2, 3, and the clinical trial. These are all the studies phases. Where in the phase 3 studies, that means it is basically being seen the effectivity of that particular vaccine. At the same time, they are also seeing the side effects of the vaccines. So in a phase 3 trial means the vaccine is almost on the verge of clinical applications. So here we can see that there are a lot of vaccine in the phase 3. A lot of vaccines in phase 3. There are a few vaccines that Sputnik in phase 1 and 2. So this Sputnik, there is a news of our city hospital also started with the Sputnik 5. And you see that the phase 3, phase 1, phase 2 completed, phase 3. So basically in a phase 3, if some of the vaccines that Covaxin in phase 3, so most of the vaccine are now in the phase 3. So we are expecting by next 1 or 2 or 3 months or 4 months, we must get some form of vaccine in any of these will come into our pictures and we can be vaccinated ourselves. Now the questions, there are a lot of questions that overall to some extent cover it area, that who will get the vaccines. The one question there will be any patient who has been already infected like me or overall, both of us been infected by COVID, whether the vaccine will be effective for us, or if at all the vaccinations has to be done for the patient who has already been infected, when it has to be done. So basically right now we really do not have, because we do not know that how much protections that we have, whether this coronavirus has given a lifelong protections, whether it has been given a protections for 6 months, that we already know, but whether it can be extended or not. So having said that, if we really do not have any ideas about that, so probably in some point of time, the patients who are being already infected with the COVID, they also have to be taken the vaccines in some point of time, but they should not be in the first line of getting the vaccines. So thank you. I am just keeping my presentation in a very short, because I need to answer a lot of questions. I am sure that you people have a lot of questions. So, so ma'am, you can actually start accepting questions for us.
Yeah. Dr. Saha, প্রথমে একজনের প্রশ্ন রয়েছে, আমি আপনাকে জিজ্ঞাসা করছি যে কোভিড ধরুন শুরু একদম বিগিনিং এর দিকে আর এখন আপনারা যে ট্রিট করছেন, আপনারা কি ধরনের চেঞ্জেস দেখতে পাচ্ছেন বা কিছু এক্সপেরিয়েন্স করছেন যে কোভিড মানে অনেকে বলে যে কোভিড একটু এখন হালকা হয়ে গেছে, এখন এফেক্ট অত স্ট্রং নেই, এটা কি সত্যি না সেরকমই আছে, বা কোনো চেঞ্জ আপনারা দেখতে পাচ্ছেন, সেটা একটু জানতে চাইব।
না, একদম ইনিশিয়ালি আমি বাংলাতেই বলি।
হ্যাঁ, বাংলাতেই বলুন, একটু বাংলা ইংলিশ
মিলিয়ে। একদম প্রথমে যখন আমরা করোনা মানে এই চিকিৎসাটা শুরু করেছিলাম, সেই সময় অনেকগুলো সমস্যা ছিল। এক হচ্ছে আমাদের কাছে কোনো নলেজ ছিল না অ্যাবাউট দ্য ভাইরাস, আমাদের কোনো এক্সপিরিয়েন্স ছিল না অ্যাবাউট দ্য ভাইরাস, আমাদের কাছে কিন্তু খুব বেশি অস্ত্র ছিল না এগেইনস্ট দ্য ভাইরাস। সো একদম ইনিশিয়াল ফেজে কিন্তু আমাদের এই যে আজকে আমরা জানতে পেরেছি যে কয়েকটা পার্টিকুলার জিনিস আছে, দোজ হু হ্যাভ আ ডেফিনিট মর্টালিটি বেনিফিট, যে এগুলো করতেই হবে এবং করলেই পেশেন্টের আউটকাম বেটার হবে। সেই জিনিসগুলো কিন্তু টু স্টার্ট উইথ ইন দ্য মান্থ অফ মার্চ অর ফেব্রুয়ারি when absolutely 1 or 2 patients come to us, so সেই সময় কিন্তু ছিল না। সুতরাং আমাদের চিকিৎসা পদ্ধতিটা এবং আমাদের আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিংটা, আমাদের এক্সপার্টাইজটা কিন্তু এখন অনেক বেড়েছে। সো ভিসাভিস আপনি যদি দেখেন যে ফর দ্য হোল medical fraternity, now the way we are treating the patients with confidence is something different. It is actually happening for everywhere, for all the scenarios. The second thing is, এটা খুব কমন যে সবাই বলছে এখন অনেক, এটা যেটা হয়েছে সেটা হচ্ছে আগে আমাদের মধ্যে একটা ফিয়ার ছিল, দ্য কোভিড ফিয়ার, সেটা কিন্তু এখন অনেক কমেছে। কমেছে তার দুটো কারণ। এক হচ্ছে যে ফিয়ার কমে দু ধরনের লোক, একটা হচ্ছে যে আমি জানি না তাই আমার ভয় নেই, আর একটা হচ্ছে আমি জানি জিনিসটা কি, কতটা ক্ষতিকর এবং কোথায় কি করতে হবে, তাতেও কিন্তু ভয় কম। তো ভয়টা যদি এই সেকেন্ড কারণে কমে থাকে, ইট ইজ গুড ফর দ্য সোসাইটি। কিন্তু যদি আমি না জেনে আমার ভয় কমে থাকে, সেটা কিন্তু ইট কুড বি আ ডেঞ্জারাস থিং। এখন যেটা আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি সেটা মোস্ট অফ দ্য ইয়াং পেশেন্টস হু আর বিং ইনফেক্টেড উইথ দ্য কোভিড, দে do not generally develop a severe disease. Young patient 25, 30, 35, there is hardly any of this age group of patients we are catering. কিন্তু কোভিড এর যে সিভিয়ারিটিটা আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি একটা এল্ডারলি এজ গ্রুপ and especially the patients who are having some sort of comorbidities like obesity, like me, the diabetes, hypertensions. So these are the patients when they are being affected with the COVID, তাদের কিন্তু সিভিয়ারিটিটা কিন্তু এখনো কমেনি। সুতরাং বি কেয়ারফুল। ইট ইজ নট দ্যাট দ্য সেম পেশেন্টস উইথ দ্য ওবিস আগে মার্চ মাসে যেরকম অ্যাফেক্টেড হয়ে সিভিয়ারিটি হয়েছিল আর এখন কম হচ্ছে, দিস ইজ নট রাইট। সুতরাং সিভিয়ারিটি অফ দ্য ডিজিজটা কিন্তু ইট ডিপেন্ডস অন নট দ্য ওভার মাস দ্য থিংস ইজ গোইং, দ্যাট মিনস দ্য সিভিয়ারিটি অর অ্যাগ্রেসিভনেস অফ দ্য ভাইরাস হ্যাজ কাম ডাউন। আমাদের কিন্তু কোভিড পেশেন্ট ম্যাক্সিমাম খারাপ হচ্ছে আইদার ভাইরাল লোড, তো খানিকটাই ডিপেন্ড করে যে কতটা ভাইরাল লোড আছে এবং আমার বডি ইমিউন সিস্টেম, ওবিরাল যেটা খুব সুন্দর করে বলেছে যে কতটা আমাদের ইমিউন সিস্টেম হাইপার রিঅ্যাক্ট করছে। সো দিজ আর অল ডিপেন্ডেন্ট অন ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল থিংস, বাট অন টপ অফ দ্যাট, ইফ সাম অফ আস আর ওবিস, this is the most important part we have seen. The obese patients, they are suffering a lot. And when they get deteriorated, it is very difficult for us to manage them as well. So what my suggestions to all of you is, keep yourself ready to have a COVID and to fight the COVID very courageously. So that means what we need to do, please do a regular physical exercise, breathing exercise. Do not take excess food for the time being for next 6 months until the vaccine is available and you have been vaccinated and been properly immune to that particular virus. So be prepare yourself, do regular exercise, reduce down or cut down your all excessive foods and lead a healthy life.
Okay. Question to Dr. Aviral Roy. How common is pneumonia during or post-COVID? Also, pneumonia is contagious in certain cases. Is it contagious in case of COVID? Could you please explain it?
Thank you for that. Good question. First, let us understand what pneumonia is. Pneumonia is an infection of the lung. COVID infects the lung. So 100% of people will actually develop pneumonia. The important question is your pneumonia severe enough that you need oxygen? Right? That is what the game-changing factor is. If I was to do CT scans on 100% of people who had COVID, 89 to 90% of them will have pneumonia in their lungs on the CT scan. So we write COVID-19 pneumonia for everybody. The important thing is, do you have enough pneumonia that you need oxygen? Okay, so that is how common pneumonia is in the lungs. Then the thing happens that people who have COVID, they recover, and then even post-recovery, they get a CT scan and that says COVID-19 pneumonia. Remember, The recovery from COVID-19 pneumonia is much faster than the CT scan recovery. CT scan recovery can last up, depending on how severe you were. If it was mild disease, it'll disappear in 2 weeks. If it was moderate disease, it might hang around for 1 to 2 months. And if it is severe disease, it might never get better. So that is important. How, and is contagious in case of COVID? I'm guessing, are you asking, is COVID contagious? In that case, what I would say is once you cross day 12 to day 14 of your COVID from the onset of symptoms, from the COVID's point of view, you are no longer contagious from COVID pneumonia. Yes, you could get some other pneumonia. You could totally get some other pneumonia, and you might be contagious from influenza, but you're not going to get COVID. Or you're not going to spread COVID.
Okay, okay. Also, there's a question that, well, it's a very common question that that if a person having affected COVID, what is the chance of getting re-affected again? I mean, re-affected, sorry.
Would you like me or would you like Dr. Saha to answer this?
So basically what is happening now, again, that reinfections that may happen at any point of time, because there are some sporadic cases that there is a news and also publications that few of our patients have got a second time of COVID infections. Now, you think for the common thing, what we are very habituated to learn and see every year, that is the dengue. If you look at the dengue, that many of us is infected second time with the dengue. So basically for the dengue, there are 4 serotypes. There are 4 type of genetic variant in the dengue. So in a patient who is being infected with one serotype of dengue, that patient is immune to that particular serotype of dengue, not the others. So there is a possibility of infected with the other serotype. So that is happening many of our patients in the city as well. But with the COVID, we really do not know what will happen. So there may be a different strain that may come in future. The same strain, they may not give the immunity for the other strain. So we do not know at this present point whether we should be, whether we can be infected with this again after having a primary one, or if we've been vaccinated in a particular strain with the COVID, whether we have been vaccinated, we have been absolutely disease, will be disease free for the rest of my life. We don't know. So it's better always to have the protections till the vaccines comes. And even if someone of us is getting infected with the COVID, please maintain all the precautions that you are maintaining before having COVID for you. So please do not be very brave that I have COVID, so I do not have any COVID. So till the all knowledge, all the information comes to us, until and unless we are sure, until the medical fraternity and the scientists are saying that it is safe or it can produce a lifelong immunity, till then it is our responsibility to keep ourselves safe by maintaining all the precautions for preventions of the COVID.
ডক্টর সাহা, এই কোভিড আবার ইনফেকশনের চান্সটা এটা কিরকম ফ্রিকোয়েন্সিতে হতে পারে, বা যা দেখা গেছে, লাইক ধরুন কোভিড হয়েছে, সেরে গেছে, তার ধরুন 5 মাস পর বা 6 মাস পরেও কি হওয়ার চান্স আছে? না এরকম অনেকে বলছে যে কোভিডটা হয়তো 17 ডেজে যায়নি, সেটা হয়তো রয়ে গেছে, সেটা পরে দেখা গেল, তো
না,
what do you feel?
What OVL has said that after the 10 days there is hardly any chance of being infected. That means that virus which is harboring to a patient inside the patients beyond 10 days or 14 days, that virus doesn't have any ability to produce the disease further. So
okay, so 10 days pore it's not contagious anymore.
No, not anymore. Usually, even for the severe disease, the patients who are taking steroid, you can extend up to 14 days. But beyond that virus, even the patient load is very high, that particular person is not contagious to anybody else. So having said that, it is obviously, it is very clear that the same virus cannot create a again infections to the same patient. It is not possible.
Okay.
And that virus may stay up to 90 days, that 3 months, even after 3 months, it has been reported that still the virus is there.
Oh, I see.
So that's why it is recommended by the ICMR and the West Bengal government as well. The all government body are discouraging of recheck the COVID after having a COVID infections. Once the patient gets cured, everybody is discouraging to check the COVID because there is always the possibility that it may come positive even after 30 days, 35 days. And that doesn't have any value.
Yes, there's a question from Shubhashish Bose. As a professional, we have started physical meetings among clients. Is it possible for us to know any symptoms from outside? I didn't get you actually. We are using masks and sanitizing our hands as you all directed us. Oh, is there something else which we need to be careful? I think that's what he's asking.
Not really. There's no way to find out just by looking at somebody whether they have COVID or not. You could do what the airports do, and that's have an infrared camera looking at their body temperatures. But beyond that, nothing more than that.
Okay.
But one thing you can actually maintain, you just do all the physical meetings in an area in a large room, and there where the air circulation is very good. So please maintain all of this.
Ensure ventilation. Good ventilation dilutes the virus in the room, so that'll help.
Okay. And what about smokers? What prevention should smokers take?
That's easy to answer. Stop smoking. Because every time you smoke, you have to take your mask off.
People who smoke, they are saying that the smoking actually helps them not to have corona.
Yeah, but then they have to take their mask off to smoke. No.
Okay. Can a senior citizen become a volunteer for vaccine trial?
Yes. Basically, all the vaccine trials, they are actually trying to vaccinate as a volunteer for the elderly people only, because they want to see that how much effective it is in the elderly group, because the mortality among the elderly group is high. Young patient having COVID, okay, they will be fine. Only the elderly people, they must be vaccinated first.
And I think that is what the current guidelines also will show. Primary first group of vaccines will probably go out to people over the age of 60, 65. That's where the first group of vaccines will probably
go. After the medical personnel.
After the frontline workers, yes. Yeah.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
You were talking about the vaccine being tried. What happens if the person dies, during the trial? How is the family compensated properly?
See, for any clinical trial in any country, there are some government body who is regulating all the protocols and the do's and don'ts of that any clinical trial. So for any clinical trial, when any volunteer their involvement into the trial, there are certain things that we need to complete before involving into the trial. So if you know that when any patients or anyone gets involved in any trial, usually there is a system where they take the monthly income, the proof of the monthly income. Why? Because if there is any questions arise in next in future about the compensation actually based on that salary. So there are certain criteria and the guidelines, and that is being completely and very rigorously maintained by the government body, DCGI. So DCGI is a body which is autonomous and it is not under anybody's, and it has a very strong and complete observations over all the trials which is happening, especially in this COVID scenario.
Right,
so you must be rest assured that anybody have any problem, they must be properly compensated. But having said that, you should always mind any patients develop any problem in future after any study may not be related with the drugs of that particular study. It may happen that the patient may die out of car accident after having the vaccine. That doesn't mean that the vaccine caused the death of that particular. I also been infected from the eyes only by touching my fingers into this. But the news that you have read and the information that you got from the Delhi, there are certain patients. Basically, we are using the very high dose of steroid for some of our patients who have been severely infected and affected, who are on ventilator. and the most of the lung being affected by the COVID. So they need a very high dose of steroids. So once you use the steroid, that means the role of a steroid just to regulate the over or hyperactive immune system of that particular patient. So basically what we are doing, we are keeping the patient's immune system down. So this is the scenario where there may be a lot of infection come into our scenarios. So that out of this, all these opportunity infection, one is the fungus. Now what you have read, that is the mucor or something zygomycosis, that is actually happen inside the nasal areas, nasopharyngeals, and this particular fungus is very notorious having the bone involvement. Actually, to the bones, and they can penetrate the bones, and they can also into the eye as well. So that eye involvement of the mucormycosis or having the zygor with the involvement vital plate and go inside the eyeballs is something different. So I don't know how from where this argument has come, but we have not yet got any particular scientific data from particular organizations from the Delhi, at least medical fraternity. Probably it is happening somewhere, some of patients, but I believe that it is all the patients who are having all this mucormycosis, zygomycosis, probably was suffering from this pneumonia for at least 4 to 5 weeks on ventilator, on high dose of steroid, or those are the patients may have underlying immune compromise beforehand also. That we don't, until unless we don't whole scenarios, the whole, all the details of that particular patients, it is really very hard to comment on. So please do not go. Being in the medical hospital is probably the best center in the city where we have able to save a lot of patients. We have experienced a lot of patients who are staying with us more than a month, across the ages, above 100 years also. So we have not found out till yet that particular zygomycosis, mucormycosis. We have also a very strong lab facilities here. So if it is happening here, we must have some ideas. But okay, as the news has come up onto the surface, we are keeping a close eyes on it. But be sure that it is not happening. Fungus doesn't happen with the normal patient. So it actually probably happening for patients who are long-standing on the ventilator, on the ICU for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So please do not bother with it.
Right, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Do people with a tendency for allergies are more susceptible to corona?
Is it an allergy in the sense where they develop asthma? Then definitely yes. More than developing COVID-19, they are at high risk for complications because they all have sensitive lungs. So the short answer there is yes. Over there for them to get the most, to have oxygen requirement to get very short of breath. COVID-19 can set off asthma exacerbation in them. So that is yes.
We hear that people who are already on asthmatic treatment are responding better to COVID. Is it true?
I could not get you. What?
People who are already under asthmatic treatment
are
responding better to
any baseline lung disease with the COVID is bad. Okay. So the patients or the people who are having underlying lung disease like a severe asthma, taking on steroid for long, be careful. Please take all the precautions not to have COVID.
Okay. In Gujarat, teachers are going to be vaccinated after the frontline workers. Will Bengal do the same? Any idea?
I think that's a question best asked to Health Minister.
This is probably a wrong platform to ask all this.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Through electronic media, I've come to know that one person is getting infected by COVID-19 I came to know that once a person is getting infected by COVID-19 virus, different body parts like brain, eye, heart, kidney, etc. are getting affected or damaged. How far is it true?
So this is pretty true. COVID-19 just does not affect your lungs. It affects all your organs in your body. The lungs just happen to be the most sensitive and the ones that show up and complain. A lot of people will get COVID-19 myocarditis, which is basically the heart muscle becomes weak. A lot of people, they develop severe weakness after COVID-19, even if they have normal lung function. A lot of them develop severe, what's called mental fogging, or it's what we call COVID encephalopathy. A lot of people will develop kidney injury. And a lot of people, their only presentation of COVID-19 is loss of smell, and some have diarrhea. So it can involve your nose, it can involve your gut, your large intestine, small intestine, kidneys, hepatitis. It causes hepatitis. You have liver involvement, you get brain involvement, heart involvement. So by no means is it a single system disease. The lung is the most common involvement because that's where it enters and that's where it does the most damage.
10 minutes.
But it still will cause other, it will, yeah. It can involve many organs.
Okay. And what are the other symptoms which a COVID patient is developing after getting infected or after being cured? Anything else? Because there are a lot of psychological issues we have
question
read.
is actually pertaining to the post-COVID scenarios, right?
Post-COVID
Yeah.
scenario, exactly.
There are certain changes that is happening after suffering from the COVID, because the COVID actually changed the understanding of life as well. I mean, if we are very frank, if anybody gets suddenly affected with the COVID, with so much of hope and planning in the life, and suddenly if somebody realize that I may die, so there is a certain change in understanding of life. That's true. But the thing, having said that, there are seriously something actually happening inside the body organs, and there are some mental cloudiness, confusions, understanding, the ability to calculations. So these are being affected. So there are certain scoring systems that usually we follow with all the psychological understanding and the assessments, like the mini mental scores. So if we look for the mini mental score, it has been shown that there are, yes, drop of mini mental score out of 30. Some people are actually scoring at around 20, 21, which is pretty well to start with the Alzheimer's. So I'm not saying it is Alzheimer's, but the point that is going down. But again, yes, it is not persisting most of the time. It is also coming back.
Okay.
So even if there are problem is happening inside, because COVID encephalopathy, it is being persisted even after the discharge. So be careful. That's why we are all asking and requesting all the people who are suffering from moderate to severe form of COVID, please keep in touch with the doctors so that you can be actually rehabilitated rightly, and your rehabilitations will be in a guided format, so that you can actually recover completely from the COVID and the post-COVID scenario.
Okay. And there's one question: is air travel safe, and or what kind of precautions does one need to take during air travel?
I have traveled multiple times by air. Is it safe? It's as safe as it can be. If honestly speaking, if you don't have to travel, don't travel. But if you have to travel, then you have no option. So what they are doing is the safest they can make it. They give you a mask, they give you an eye shield, and if you're sitting in the middle seat, they put PPE on. Aircrafts have HEPA filters in them, so those are viral grade filters in their air systems, and they change the air within the air cabin 20 times a minute, 20 times an hour, which is once every 3 minutes. There is fresh oxygen pumped through the entire plane. That's as safe as it's going to get.
Okay.
Sarbani, can I ask a small question, if you don't mind?
Yes, please.
Dr. Roy, I am worried. In fact, a lot of people like me are worried. My son is studying in Sonipat, and he stays in the hostel. Okay. Now, he has been forced to stay here, but now the people have announced that they're going to take back people 50% in a batch from 1st of February. That means around 5,000 people, 2,500 students will be called there. How safe will it be? Can you please tell me this? And in one room, there are going to be 2 students staying, and they have an open mess there, etc. So how safe will it be to send him?
Like the question then finally, it's not a question of versus how safe is it. The question is what is acceptable risk.
Okay.
Right. And the truthful answer is, are you willing to lose an entire year of schooling to stay safe? And how much? And fine, he might be in Sonipat and he may not go to school, but if he's just sitting at home, he might go to the mall or he might go to a movie theater and he might get it from over there. So if the simple answer, it's not as cut and dry as, how safe is it to reopen schools? The simple thing is, it's not the safest thing to do, but can you ensure that people will not be doing other unsafe behaviors and getting themselves COVID anyways? So it's a nuanced answer.
Yes.
It's not a cut and paste. Is it safe to reopen schools? It may not be as safe. And different people have different ideas of what is acceptable risk, right?
What happened if this son was yours? I know you're too young to have an old son like that.
Depends.
No,
Is he going to lose a year of
basically
school?
you can
Is he
think,
going to lose a year of school?
Right.
I would send him.
You can actually think of in a different way, right? There are three portions of the schooling and the college system, because the school you can think of it, but in a college most of the people are aging around 18 to 24.
Right.
So these are the groups, even with what we are seeing now, even they are being infected, they are not actually severely affected.
Exactly.
Right. So my understanding is, rather than losing a years, because see, if we lose a year, that means we are actually losing a total batch in the country, and it will actually, the country will suffer later on. So it's better to send them, to teach them, to train them. They are the futures of ours. They will see us. So there is no questions of keeping them back in the home and just not to allow them to attend the college.
It's
and what Oviral is saying is perfectly right, because they are not sitting at the home, they are going everywhere. So why not at the college?
Thank you.
I guess an easier way to think about it, sir, is I'm a doctor, right? Going to the ICU is one of the most riskiest things I could do.
Oh.
Should I go or should I sit at home and say, no, it's unacceptable risk?
Got it. Tickets are going to be booked tonight. Thank you.
Do you foresee an end to this pandemic, or is there is this here to stay like flu?
So pandemics by definition will end. So the flu, this COVID-19 will most likely transition from being a pandemic to becoming endemic. Basically means just like influenza, it'll have ups and downs. It'll come in the winter, it'll go away in the summer. And that's exactly what we saw in Europe as well, right? They were very, very strict to the initial lockdown. They had their summer months, they were fully open. There were people going around walking in the parks, they were drinking and eating at pubs, and they were fine. And then the moment it got cold and winter set in, their numbers went through the roof all over again. We're going to actively immunize. Hopefully we have an influenza vaccine. Remember that there is a vaccine against influenza too. And so that's what we're going to see. It's going to get worse in the winters and it'll get better in the summers.
Okay. Dr. Saha, there's a question for you. Amar COVID hoychilo ekdom shurute. There's a question. So, ami practically asymptomatic chilam. Amar ki ekhono kono side effect er chance ache?
এখনো সাইড এফেক্টস হওয়ার চান্সেস খুব কম, but please take all the precautions till you are being vaccinated.
One last question: is Medica super specialty hospital ready to vaccinate people if required? Dr. Roy.
100% most definitely. I believe not only Medica, but every single hospital in the state, or for the matter in the country, that gets permission to vaccinate the community will be more than happy.
Good evening, one and all. And as we started the webinar, and our Chartered President Shravani, as she said, our life took a 360-degree turn 10 months back, which is very, very true. Because in this outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, it led to a sudden shift in the dynamics of workforce behavior and work from home policies everywhere. So against such a scenario, this webinar is definitely the call of the hour. I wish to thank Dr. Amitabh Oshaha and Dr. Aviral Roy and Medica Hospitals. You have taken out time to be with us today and answer our queries and giving us very, very valuable information. Because as we were talking, I was looking at the figures and I found on 11 September, the new reported cases were 97,000 plus, and on 17 December, it has gone down to 22,890. But as the doctors told us, we cannot let our guard down. Caution is always there, and we have to be prepared to fight the disease with increased immunity. I also wish to mention here that one of our teachers from Birla Bharti had gone to Medica Super Speciality Hospital, Abira Sheel, and she came back recovered in 7 days, and she was extremely happy and pleased with the treatment that was meted out to her at Medica. I wish to thank our President Rajlakshmi Mohan, our Secretary Sheila Jankiram for coming up with this health webinar. I also wish to thank Soma Bhan for organizing this medical webinar, and also our Charter President Shabani Chakraborty for impeccable comparing as always. I also thank all our guests who have joined us from other Rotary Club. I wish to thank the teachers of Birla Bharti for being with us here today, because there's one question which really struck a chord, that should teachers be vaccinated first? Because that is happening in Gujarat. I don't know about Bengal, but yes, perhaps that is also the call of need of the hour. And I end by saying a funny quote which is going around and all of us feel this way: can we uninstall 2020 and install it again? Because this version has a virus, but as the doctors told us, there's light at the end of the tunnel. The vaccine is there, which is very, very safe, right? If I am not wrong, 0.001%. And that death rate is also due to some accident, not because of the vaccine. Thank you once again. And I think it has been an extremely, extremely informative webinar. Many myths were busted, but at the same time, we have become more resilient mentally against the coronavirus. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Aviral Roy. Thank you, Dr. Shaha. Thank you, Opala.